Good day, everyone. For our 11th lesson in reading and writing, we will be talking about position paper. So, for today's lesson, we would be defining what a position paper is. We would also be discussing the different steps and guidelines in writing a position paper, as well as its general outline. We'll also be giving out tips on how to write a position paper. Before we begin, take a look at the following set of pictures. Which is better for you? I'm sure that from the set of pictures I have shown you, you each have your own preference. Not only that, each and every one of you also have specific reasons as to why you chose that particular option. In academic writing, we can also express our preferences and discuss our own choices, beliefs, and stance through formulating a position paper. Now, what is a position paper? Basically, a position paper is a kind of academic writing in which the writer researches about a particular topic, and more often than not, this topic is a controversial issue. Now, this writer would eventually then write a paper explaining his or her stand or his or her viewpoint regarding this particular issue. It is also described as a type of academic paper that describes a position on an issue and the rationale for that particular position. So it's either you agree or you disagree, or you're in favor or not in favor of that particular issue or topic. And it's not enough that you just state if you agree or disagree. You also have to state and include in your position paper or in your write-up the reason why you agree and disagree, or disagree rather. Now, the main purpose of writing a position paper is basically to generate support on a particular issue. Similarly, when you write a position paper, everything that you have to include should be based on facts. And these facts would eventually provide a solid foundation for your argument. So if you agree, then you have to support your agreement to the topic with evidence, with pieces of evidence. And these evidence could only be considered evidence or solid evidence if these are based on facts. Next, let's discuss the different steps in writing a position paper. The first step, of course, is obviously you have to choose a topic for your position paper. Now, like what I have mentioned earlier, more often than not, writers of position papers would try to choose or would select a topic that is controversial in nature. It is something that is well talked about in the society or in the place or in the context wherein the writer is writing. Next, as a writer and as a producer of academic texts, obviously you have to conduct your research even before moving to the writing part. The next thing that you have to consider in writing your position paper is, of course, challenging your very own topic. Now, some of you might ask me, why do we have to challenge our own topic? Aren't we just generating support for our own beliefs, for our own viewpoints, or our own stand regarding that particular topic? It's very important that you anticipate Okay, anticipate questions that may be coming from people who would disagree with your own stand, with your own viewpoint. In that way, considering their own position or their own beliefs would enable you to prepare better, to prepare your arguments in a better manner. After which, it's best that you now collect supporting evidence, evidence that would support your stand, evidence that would support your viewpoint. The last step, of course, in writing a position paper is creating an outline. Like what we have mentioned in our earlier discussions about reading and writing, it is always essential that we create an outline before even writing our final draft or even our first draft. Here are some general guidelines that you can follow whenever you are writing a position paper. The first one, of course, is using evidence that would support your position. Now, it's best that these evidence that you would be including in your write up or in your position paper, in your essay, include information such as statistical evidence or even relevant dates and events. The next guideline is validating your own position. Now, how do you validate your own position? You can actually include authoritative references or even primary source quotations. So, what do we mean by that? You can use hedging in terms of stating some facts or some pieces of evidence to support your position. Take, for example, if you are going to write a position paper about getting vaccinated with a COVID-19 vaccine. If you are in favor of getting inoculated with a vaccine, then you can use scientific evidence that would support your claim. And you can reference those pieces of claims, scientific claims, or scientific information with statements from doctors, with statements from scientists, with statements from government agencies, and the like. That is basically what we mean by validating our own position. So you are trying to gather support not just from facts, not just from evidence, but also from other people who have discussed or who have knowledge, basic knowledge, or primary knowledge rather, of the information that you are presenting. Next, you need to also examine the strengths and the weaknesses of your position. Now, every position that we take, it's not going to be perfect. People would be agreeing, people would be disagreeing with that. Once you present that particular position, you have to know, you have to identify where will it fail in terms of you explaining your position and where will it be on the upper hand. So you need to make sure that everything that you would be including in your position paper are strong in nature. They have the strength to fully support, to fully back up your very own standpoint, your very own viewpoint. The fourth one is to evaluate possible solutions and, of course, suggest courses of action. Now, more often than not, when we say position paper, it's more on just stating your own viewpoint, more on just stating your own opinions about a particular topic. But it is also important to note that when it is already considered an academic text, we don't just end the discussion there. We don't just end the discussion with you agreeing to the topic or you disagreeing to the topic. You need to make sure that as an academic writer, you also suggest possible solutions. Since this is a very controversial topics, or these are very controversial topics that you are discussing, there are problems that will be arising from it. Okay, so with those problems, if you were able to identify the problems that may arise from those topics or from those concerns, those issues, then you also have to suggest possible solutions to those problems. Okay, and aside from that, not only the solutions to it, how are you going to reach those solutions? How are you going to implement, or how are we going to have those solutions at the end of the day? How are we going to solve the problem at the end of the day? Now, you can do this by, of course, suggesting different courses of action. On your screen right now, you can find a general outline of a position paper. Now, a general outline is just a recommended outline whenever you write your position paper. So basically, it has three main parts: your introduction, your body, and of course, your conclusion. It doesn't necessarily mean that you will only create three paragraphs. Your body, the body of your essay, could contain already multiple paragraphs discussing, of course, your different the different information that you will be presenting, or the different evidence that will be supporting your claim. Okay, so it could contain three or more paragraphs depending on how you will be discussing your essay. Okay, so let's start first with the introduction. Your introduction basically is your um, part of the first part of your position paper. In your introduction, it is best that you already identify the issue. Write write it down right away, state it right away. What is the issue that you will be discussing? After which, you need to state your position regarding that or concerning that particular issue. Are you in favor? Are you not in favor? Do you agree or you disagree? Do you think it's good? Do you think it's bad? And so on and so forth. So it's best that in the introduction itself, you already discuss your issue and your stand or your viewpoint. For the second part of your essay, your development or the body of your essay, you need to make sure that you, of course, first provide background information. What is the topic all about? Okay, or what is the issue all about? Why did it become an issue in the first place? Or why do people argue about it in the first place? Okay, so you can include that in your body. And then, of course, discuss your own stand, your own viewpoint. And you can do this by giving out supporting evidence or facts that are related to your position. And then, of course, it is also important that you discuss both sides of the issue. Like what we have mentioned earlier, it is best that we anticipate what other people might say or might point out regarding our own beliefs, our own position about that particular issue. Okay. So the next one, the last one, is the conclusion. As for the conclusion, as we all know, conclusion is basically a reiteration of what you have already discussed in your introduction and, of course, in your body. Now, for your conclusion, you don't need to include new pieces of information. Your conclusion must only contain a summary of your main concepts and ideas. So it's a repetition of what you have already mentioned in a summarized form. Okay? As part of your conclusion as well, you can also suggest, this is the part wherein you can suggest different courses of action. How are we going to eventually solve this issue? How are we going to get to the, of course, the last part, your possible solution? So you can discuss all of these towards the end of your position paper. Here are some tips in writing a position paper. First and foremost, you don't have to be afraid of being argumentative. Some people might think that stating their own position, stating their own standpoint or viewpoint about a particular issue, especially if it's controversial in nature, is a bad thing. Okay? It's not. It's okay for us to be argumentative as long as we are able to support our own stand, our own viewpoint with solid pieces of information or solid pieces of evidence. So if you agree, if you really agree, um, go state it that you agree. If you disagree, then state your disagreement and why do you agree or why do you disagree in the first place. You don't have to follow what everyone else is saying about a certain thing. If you disagree with them, then so be it. If you agree, then so be it. Do not be afraid to be argumentative. Next, of course, part of being argumentative and part of writing a position paper is looking at all sides of the issue. Um, since this is an academic form of writing, you need to consider others' opinions as well. So you can do this by looking at all sides of the issue and basing your opinion on a thorough examination of all the relevant evidence. Okay, like what we have mentioned earlier, it's not enough that just because, for example, your friend agrees with it, or your entire family agrees with it, or your entire class agrees with it, okay, then automatically you would agree with it as well. No, that's not the case. If you really believe that there is something wrong or something that is not right about a particular topic or a particular issue and you don't agree with it completely, then try to examine everything before you make your final stand or before you state your final viewpoint or stand regarding that particular issue. Next, it is also best that you convince your reader that you have critically read the text or even analyze the issue as well. Now, how do you do this convincing? You can convince your reader if you really support your write-up or your position paper, your position, your very own position with solid evidence. So you can include statistics like what we have mentioned earlier. You can include references, reliable sources of information, not just base your information from news that you can see on Facebook. You can get quotations or statements from professionals, from people who are relevant to the nature of the position paper or the topic that you are discussing. So there are many ways wherein you can do this. As long as your references are reliable and your sources of information are trustworthy, then it's gonna be okay. As part of writing a position paper or even any piece of academic text, you always need to express your thoughts clearly and concisely. There is a misconception wherein academic text should always be long. Okay, academic text should always use highfalutin words. That's not always gonna be the case. Okay, effective academic text would always be written in a way that is concise, in a way that is direct to the point, in a way as well wherein a lot of people could easily understand them. So similarly, in writing your position paper, just make sure that you express your thoughts in a clear manner, and of course, state your information, state the pieces of information that you have gathered, and state your position as well as concisely as possible. Now, part of expressing your thoughts clearly and concisely is, of course, the use of vivid verbs and concrete. With the use of vivid verbs and concrete nouns, you would be able to formulate a piece of writing that the readers could essentially or easily understand. Here are my sources and references. Thank you for watching.